Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of really great content to get to. My name is Paige Picorni. I'm with No Kid Hungry. We are a campaign of Share Our Strength. And I'm so excited to have you here to talk about after school meals in libraries. So thinking not just about summer meals in libraries, but offering year-round nutrition. A few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded and the slide deck will be shared to all attendees and registrants via email. We'll also have time at the end for the presentation to hear from you. So please place all of your questions in the Q&A box and we'll be sure to get those at the end of the presentation. And anything we don't get to, if we do run out of time, we will be sure to answer by email. Also, we encourage you to use the chat box throughout the session to engage with each other and the speakers. There's a variety of people on the call with a lot of cumulative experience, so please do leverage that chat box. To start off, I'd love to hear from the folks on the call, your name, your organization, and where you're logging in from. And then last but not least, we do have closed captioning available on today's webinar, so please do use that service if you'd like to. For today's agenda, I'm going to kick us off with a quick CACFP at-risk overview, which is the complicated name for after-school meals. And then I'll punt it over to our awesome speakers. We have a great list of panelists today. First off, you'll hear from Jasmine Laboso. She's from Kern County Library, based out of California. Next, you'll hear from Sarah Wright from Columbus Metropolitan Library in Ohio. And then also in Ohio, you'll hear from Shannon Amos from Children's Hunger Alliance in Ohio. She is a sponsor of the After School Meals program. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be going into audience Q&A and then kicking it to the end with the resources from No Kid Hungry. Next slide. I am going to flip the script a little bit though, because there's a really exciting resource I want to talk about when we have everyone on the call, and that is our new library webpage. So this webpage we put together just for libraries to learn about the summer and after school meals programs, and we want you to share it widely. So I'm going to try to multitask and drop this in the chat. And of course, all of these resources will be available after the call. So wanted to call that out. Also a special thank you to my colleague, Chelsea McCormick, who made this happen, and the group of libraries that we've been working with who also helped make this happen. So thank you all. Next slide. Now for the After School Meals program. The After School Meals program is a component of the Child and Adult Care Food Program, also known as the CACFP At-Risk After School Meals Program, which is a mouthful, and I understand that. It is a federal child nutrition program and one of many child nutrition programs that operate to serve meals to children. It's administered by state agencies, and what state agency that is in differs by state. So sometimes it's in the Department of Education, other times in the Department of Agriculture, and other times in the Department of Human Services. And we do have a report, I think I plug a little bit later, that has where your state, what agency CACFP lies in. The After School Meals program is designed to support both schools and community-based after school programs with free meals for children. It's available in areas where at least half of students are eligible for free or reduced price meals. So it's geographic based. And we have a really great resource, a map that will tell you if your site is eligible to participate as an after school meal site. And while an enrichment activity must be offered to children, they do not have to participate to receive a meal. And it's open to all kids ages 18 and under, regardless if they participate in the enrichment activity. How the After School Meal program helps. So it offers a healthy meal with 3 to 5 items. It's a balanced meal and there are nutrition standards to which that the meal must abide by. And we found that it helps improve end-of-day behavior, focus, and performance, and provides needed energy for after-school activities and learning, and supports children and families facing food insecurity in your community. Next slide. So a little more into how the program works. There are both sponsors and sites to the After School Meals program. So the first way to participate is being a sponsor. So sponsors are the organizations that are approved by the state agency to operate the program. In most cases, sponsors procure or prepare meals that are delivered to the sites to be served by to participating children. Sponsors are then reimbursed for those meals by federal funds. Sponsors are responsible for the bulk of the administrative tasks and paperwork. So like I said, procuring the meals, delivering the meals is usually on the sponsor side. On the other hand, the site, which is in most cases with the sponsor site relationship, the library, sites are the location where the meals are served. In most cases, sites receive meals from sponsors and are responsible for serving the meals to the participating children. However, sites are responsible for maintaining some paperwork like meal counts and attendance rosters. Next slide. So you might be asking yourself, how do I find a sponsor? There are multiple ways. Two great ways are checking out the National CACFP Association database. However, this is not inclusive of all sponsors, so definitely contact your state agency. And there's that link I was mentioning before to get a full list of sponsors in your area. And also, ask around. You might be able to reach out to your local food bank, school, YMCA, or Boys and Girls Club, who are all common sponsors of the program. And how we can help. We provide a lot of resources and educational materials linked at our website there, and can assist with navigating the program. We try to highlight effective service models and share promising practices and grant opportunities that you might be able to take advantage of. And then lastly, connecting you with mentors and stakeholders in your state who may already be running the program and can provide some great expertise and experience on there from what they've learned from running the program. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Jasmine. And so remember, put those questions in the chat box, or I'm sorry, not in the chat box, in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. Jasmine, it's all you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jasmine Labasso. Are we going to be putting up my slides real quickly just to double check? Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so my name is Jasmine Labasso. I am from the Kern County Library. I work across a whole bunch of different projects, and one of them is the Lunch the Library program for Kern. It is one of my babies. I've been working with it since it started at Kern County. Just to kind of point out before we get too far, I love this photo because in a nutshell, it shows what the Lunch in the Library program is all about. It is a wonderful child enjoying her meal with the library in the background. And this is actually at our Delano branch library. So this is a photo of our local community enjoying the program locally. And so I always just love to look at that and just think about how wonderful the program is. Let's go to the next slide. So to give you some information about Kern County is one of the largest physical counties in the state of California. We are a county library system where we're a general fund department, which means that we don't have a lot of extra funding for special programs. We get support through grants and other types of funding streams to help us start wonderful programs like this. Our county library system maintains 22 branches, and we're across 8,000 square miles. We have just under 1 million in our population. We are a blend of urban communities, suburban communities, and rural communities. So we're serving a whole bunch of different areas. We have been offering lunch at the library, so that's during June and July at many of our locations since about 2014. We expand every single year, and we began to actually serve meal service beyond summer months in June and July and throughout the year in 2020 due to the waivers that were available from the federal government during COVID. And that's really when we started to be more open to the idea of meal service beyond our summer months. With a grant from No Kid Hungry, we launched our first after-school program in 2021 in some of our rural communities in the agricultural sector of Kern County, specifically at Arvin, Delano, and Wasco. And all three of these communities are rural agricultural communities. They have anywhere between 50,000 to under 10,000 community members. They experience a lot of issues with their food deserts, and there's a lot of migratory populations. We also started our after-school meal service program at Beale at the same time, which is our main library in Bakersfield. And this has been a wonderful way for us to evaluate the success of the program, both in a rural environment as well as a more urban city center environment. Next slide. Since we've begun offering meal services at the Kern County Library, we have served a lot of meals and we continue to see it increase. So I've included a chart here that kind of gives a nice visual representation of how it's increased over time. We anticipated when COVID happened that we would not be serving meals as much. And I would say that honestly, the other flip side of that happened, and we've just continued to increase what we're offering to the community, which is really, really cool, actually. So in 2020, we offered about 17,000 meals that we were able to serve to children in our community across Kern County, with 29% of those being beyond June and July, which was really exciting for us. When we got into 2021, we served over 29,000 meals, with almost half of those being outside of summer timeframe. And as of this year, we've already served over 6,000 meals, and that's just at our after school locations, which, like I said, we only have 4 of those, which isn't a lot of locations. So I've been quite impressed with our numbers so far. This photo is a wonderful photo of a child enjoying a meal at our Beale Memorial Library location during the summer. And so I love the link up between offering meals and the link up with literacy, which is like such a perfect example right here. She's walking out with her meal and she's walking out with a book. So that's the biggest success you can say, right? Next slide. So we always go through with both of our staff as well as our partners to talk about why the library is an important place to offer meals. I know that traditionally it's not really seen as a place to bring food into. It makes people kind of uncomfortable to think about the idea of doing that, especially at some of your locations that might not have a lot of space to offer meal service. But honestly, most of our locations don't have a lot of space. So we've been doing this for a long time. It's very well received in the community. And we found that a lot of families are so excited to be in the environment, to access meal service. And so it doesn't end up being too much of an impact on our day-to-day services. We found that it closes gaps in meal services. People feel like it's a trusted community space. And because we're highly valued, we've become a very popular meal site for families. We can help increase program participation from our meal sponsors. We often find that meal sponsors, when we talk to them, struggle to get people through the doors. And because of the engagement opportunities that we offer, it gets people excited to come access the resources that are available locally to them. We also find that it's a great way to reach people that are in underserved communities, which many of our communities are in Kern County. And we've also been able to generate a lot of new partnerships. So overall, when we're talking to our meal sponsors for the first time, which we partner primarily in our community with school districts, we find that our goals align and it ends up being a win-win situation for both of us. Next slide. So to reach children and teens, because that's kind of the big thing, that's why they're partnering with us in the first place, is that you got to leverage your teen volunteers. They're your advocates. Teens are always hard to get on board no matter what you're doing, in all honesty. But I find that Lunch at the Library ends up being such a wonderful way to get them involved. They get to have a community that they build themselves around. They get to be involved constantly. They get to get fed afterwards. Kids or teens specifically are more interested in programs whenever they're fed, in all honesty. So we get to kind of bring them in and leverage their support. This is a great way to also ensure that the program is successful. We, as a general fund library system, don't have a lot of extra funding. And so honestly, teen volunteers is what's made the program happen for us. And they also tend to be our biggest outreach tool, in all honesty. We like to incentivize families with book giveaways that helps them build their at-home library. Then it also is a tool to get people in the door for the first time. If they get in the door, see the program, then they're aware that there's free meal service available in their area and they access it more in the future. We always offer enrichment. Sometimes we can get people into the door just by enjoying a program. For after school meal service specifically, our primary enrichment opportunity is that we offer a homework space. So space where people can complete their homework. And that's a really easy thing to carry out because it's really what we're already offering day to day as a homework space. We're just labeling it that, right? What we do at a lot of our locations as well is bring in tutors, but that's not always there and that's not always needed. It's kind of an added bonus. We utilize a lot of online marketing to reach the community, including social media ads. When we first launched the program, we had pretty much about 3-week lead time. And every time we do this, we always seem to never have a lot of lead time, and social media is what really makes it happen. But we've also expanded to do traditional marketing. With No Kid Hungry's grant, we were able to expand to doing direct mail campaigns. And we found that that's really helpful, particularly in our rural communities that have neighborhood libraries and they're in walking distance. So what we'll do is we'll send out postcards to the couple miles around the library. And we've seen dramatic increase in usage, attendance, and awareness of the program. And the most important thing is to talk to everybody. A lot of times, sometimes when people first start the program, they kind of just want to be in a corner in their room and just see if people kind of walk up. But no, you've got to talk to everybody. People don't feel like they can access free meal service until you tell them they're allowed to. So next slide. So considerations, a few things when you're thinking about your after school meal service or your lunch at the library meal service is to think about your space, your serving area, where you're going to allow people to eat and where you're going to greet people and serve the meals themselves. I've actually included a floor plan of one of our small libraries. When I say that this library is small, I'm pretty sure that my own house is probably bigger than this entire library. It is maybe, if we're being optimistic, maybe 2,000 square feet. So it is a tiny library. It has a meeting room, but I would not say it's the most impressive meeting room. So what we learned really quickly is that we couldn't rely upon that meeting room. As you can see in this floor plan, the green area is actually where we plan to serve meals. And what we do is we announce when meal service is going to happen, and we let people know at the computer area that it's going to be loud. There's going to be a lot of kids around, and we actually place people between the library stacks, and just kind of the whole building turns into the meal service area. And you have to do that with small libraries. You know, in a large library, you can afford to have a whole separate room dedicated to it. But in the small ones, it becomes the whole library is the meal service area. And we remind our customers that it's only for an hour or 2 hours with after school meal service, and it's going to pass quickly. And if they want to come in during a quieter time, we give them kind of recommendations for the quietest times of the day. And we just kind of continue to talk to our community. So think about your meal space and don't take any area off the table. Just because there's books there near there does not mean you can't have meal service there. Another thing to think about is equipment like food warmers, milk boxes, fridges, things like that. Not all partners need that to serve meals. Some bring them in just coolers and they're totally fine with that. But we have a lot of school districts that we partner with, and some of them like to have hot meals available. So they want food warmers in our building. In a library like Delano, there's not a lot of room. There's old outlets. So we have to really think about how is that going to affect the power, and we have to pick the right place to put it and make sure that the serving area is near that equipment as needed. You know, work with your food vendor to make sure that there's a parent caregiver option available. We don't do this for after school, but we do it for in the middle of summer, and it really helps bring families in when parents can eat with their kids. And if they don't want to purchase a meal to eat with their kids, encourage them to bring their own meals with them, and don't close the door on that just because they don't want to have what's kind of offered. Let them eat as a family. They're going to be more willing to participate in it. Plan your responses for tricky situations. You're going to get families that are going to make comments like, oh, this is only for people that really need it, or, oh, how are you dealing with this? They'll ask questions. They'll maybe kind of make a negative comment. You want to let them know that this isn't coming out of the library budget. This is actually something that's already normally available, and we're just partnering to get it to more people, and you be super positive about it. The other consideration to keep in mind is maybe plan a tracking sheet to keep track of how you're doing your statistics, just because you're going to have to keep a lot of keep everything together and keep all these stats for the program itself, according to CACFP, or how you pronounce it. But you're also going to have to keep your own stats. And so we made our own custom tracking sheet so our staff can keep track of everything. And it helps us really leverage our volunteers if it's all in one place as well. Next slide. I'm going to be going through these super fast because I know I only have so much time. So Connect families while they're there. Create resource packets. One of the things that we've done with our after school program is that we actually hand out packets that lets them know about food banks and other free meals in the area, so that we're helping destigmatize access to food resources and connect them as much as possible. Put out nutritional activities. Even a little nutritional booklet that talks about the importance of healthy eating is a step and helps bring that into their hemisphere, their daily hemisphere. Put out play food in kitchens. Let them play with it and think about food as an important part of their day. This is a fantastic opportunity also to connect them to our physical book collection. Put out book displays, change them up daily. You will see circulation increase when you leverage lunch services and dinner services as well, after school services. Also, get creative with your programming. If you see a lot of people coming in, do an impromptu program, connect them, use that opportunity. You have a rapt audience in front of you who's not going to move because they got to finish their meal first. Next slide. A couple other strategies. Meal spaces, make sure you have an image release policy posted. You want to be able to take photos throughout without having to ask every single individual person, because that will take up too much time. Make sure you have a lunch rules sign posted so you don't have to be the food police. There's a lot of rules associated with these programs and they're important and you want to be aware of them, but you also don't want to feel like it's a punitive atmosphere. Make sure to have a put back table so people can put back their seconds or things that they don't want, and they can not have to deal with that with the service area. Also put your surveys on tables so people will fill them out and let you know what they think of the program. Before your service, make sure that you are tracking how much is coming in. Make sure to keep inventory everything, keep track of whether or not your meals aren't getting melted. That happens sometimes with containers that dropped off. I think when it comes to cleanup, Simple Green is a fantastic thing. We were recommended that by one of our partners, and it's school approved, and it doesn't hurt your lungs if you've got breathing issues. So Simple Green is fantastic. Another way to deal with cleanup is to utilize butcher paper to put it on the table and just clean it up super quick, and to have your volunteers just easy, quick cleanup. Next slide. Make sure to take ownership of the program and be your point person. You want to let people know that this is happening, engage yourself in the space and be approachable, introduce yourself to everyone, speak with the children and participate in the programs if you can. That helps build connections between the staff and the community, and they're more interested in participating. Make sure to constantly conduct announcements. People are going to be coming in constantly, and so a lot of the people that come in may have not heard your initial announcements. Next slide. Okay, to wrap it up, because I know I went probably a little too long, focus on the fact that you're never going to 100% know how it's going to go, but just go for it. When you try it, you will learn day to day and ends up being a daily program that's incredibly successful. And honestly, I cannot say enough about how much this program has benefited our community. That's it from me.
All right, I'm happy to jump in. I am Sarah Wright. I work for the Columbus Metropolitan Library, and we can jump into the next slide. Actually, one more. Let's just keep going. I'm a Young Minds program leader, and my role here at the library is to work with teens and our kind of after school age crowd. So I am very familiar with after school snack. If you want to jump to the next one. So who are the libraries that are within Columbus Metropolitan Library? We have 23 locations, and we serve a community of about 2.1 million in our metro area. So it's big. We are also part of a 17 library system consortium, and that consortium ranges across 7 counties and can be anywhere from teeny tiny one building rural library systems to multi-building suburban systems. Next slide. So Young Minds, we are a super strategically focused organization, and our #1 strategy is serving our youth through our Young Minds. So our overall goal is to make sure that all Central Ohio kiddos are prepared and have a foundation for a successful life. So this means we have school help centers in all of our locations, ready for kindergarten classes, story times, play-based learning programs, media centers with technology, and hundreds of programs every year, especially during the summer. So long story short, kids and teens are important to us. Next slide. So we try and take a holistic view of our kiddos and our teens. Some kids will spend all day, every day at the library, especially in the summer. They might arrive soon after opening at 9 a.m. and they might not leave until closing at 9 p.m. Many staff notice that not all of these young people are eating during that time. They might not have enough food. They might not have food with them or enough money to go buy food. And some might not have food at home that they can go eat. So in 2004, we piloted our first summer lunch program at 4 of our branches. Today, we've got a summer food program at 15 of our locations, just to ensure that our young people are able to have something to eat. We serve lunch at a lot of our locations, as well as a small snack. When our kids are hungry, they're not only like uncomfortable or unhealthy, but they have a harder time learning, tend to act out more, lose their focus. So serving food benefits them in more ways than just a full belly. Next slide. So we started our after school snack program because food insecurity does not end when the summer ends. Many students in Columbus get free breakfast and free lunch at school, but the rest of the day is not always super certain. One of the branches where I worked, there were several children who shared with us that they only ate at school, and the rest of the time they were just waiting to get back to school to eat. The bus dropped them off at the library. They were there till 9. Sometimes on the good days, they would all pool their money and go to the local gas station to buy some chips. But on the bad days, they were all just there and taking trips to the drinking fountain to kind of stave off their hunger pains. So a lot of staff, like myself, started stocking granola bars and things in my desk so it could just be a quick sliding it over. Well, we started talking with each other and we realized, hey, a lot of us are doing this. So the library system decided, we need to explore food service during the school year also after school. Just like with the summer, you need a sponsor to get set up. It's the beautiful thing about a sponsor is they provide the food. They handle all of the vouchers and the reimbursements. You don't have to worry about the financial piece. And they do most of the paperwork. That is the dream right there. So our sponsor during the summer was the Columbus Recreation and Parks Department, because they have 200 sites throughout the city. However, they weren't able to sponsor us during the school year. And so we actually work with Children's Hunger Alliance, who you will hear from in just a little bit, for after school. It worked so well that we moved from a pilot of 2 locations to serving snack after school at 15 of our branches, the same ones that serve lunch during the summer. Next slide, please. So the requirements for after school feeding are a little bit more complicated than the summer. We negotiated how we would track the students, since many of the programs that we had available here in Ohio require documenting first and last name. So we were able to compromise and find a new solution with first name and then first initial of the last name. For us, instead of daily delivery, we do a shelf-stable after-school snack. This is super convenient for ease of access. You know you've got your snack there ready to go. You don't have to put it in the fridge. So that's pretty awesome. And you don't have to worry about what's going to happen if there's a traffic delay. Amazing. However, we now have to store all of these boxes of food, usually about 2 weeks where it gets dropped off. And if your library is anything like my library, closets are already pretty stuffed, and we had to make some adjustments on where are we going to put everything. You also have to find meeting room space or a space in your library that you can say this is our designated food service space, and staff to manage this food service program during what is often one of the busiest times of day in our library system, since we offer a lot of after-school programming. Part of mitigating that issue is many of our branches serve within their school help center. So they're already offering that homework help, and then they also serve snack in the same space. The staff are doing double duty there for a minute, but it's a win-win of homework and feeding. Another thing to keep in mind is you do not have to be youth services to offer the snack. Our entire team pitches in, so we will have circulation, managers, security guards, everyone gets trained and is able to offer that snack. So that way we always have someone there who can help out. Next slide. Successes. One of my favorite stories from one of our branches was a young customer who came in and he was drinking his dragon punch that came with his after school snack. And he had just checked out some Magic Tree House books. And he told the staff, "It feels like my birthday," because it was so special to him that he was able to get this snack, have this like delicious punch, along with some like fruits and veggies and beautiful things. And he wanted to come back because he had his books, his snack, it was beautiful. Staff have also noticed changes in behavior. There's fewer incidents with our young customers acting out when they have something to eat. I don't know about you, I get hangry. I totally get it. We need to support these kids and get them some food. And parents have shared how grateful they are that their kids can come after school. I have another story. One mom shared with me that her kids are hungry after school. She doesn't always have time or money to get them something. And she feels torn between taking them home to get something to eat and bringing them to the library or wherever to get help with their homework or reading practice. So when we started this program, she was so excited because she didn't have to choose between feeding her kids or helping them with their education. So it makes everyone feel welcome and excited. Next slide. All right, so this upcoming school year is going back to kind of what it used to be. This teeny tiny thing called the pandemic happened, which threw us all for a loop. But normally the snack is served all in one room in congregate feeding. So you have to eat, but we had switched to grab and go with the waivers that we have from Congress. However, we're flipping back with the upcoming school year. We are eating all together in person, which does mean we get to do a little bit more programming as they eat since it's not grab and go anymore. We do have to think about a few things to prep for this because grab and go can be a little bit easier as you're handing it out. So we have to get all of our meeting rooms reserved. We have to adjust some staff schedules because it does take a little bit more staff time when you're serving and you're not just handing it out. And one thing that I have to note, we have to make sure we've got our big trash cans available because you will have all of the trash left over from the meal and the packaging or the juice boxes or whatever it might be. And the little day-to-day paper trash cans just can't cut it. We're gonna have 15 sites serving after school snack again. Anyone that isn't already doing it in their school help centers will have different things that are a little bit extra, like games, questions of the day, would you rather questions, different things like that to engage the kids while they're doing it before they go on to the next program that we're offering in our spaces. Making it a fun hangout space really helps reduce any stigma. At most of our branches, this is just expected. We've got after school snack and it's another program, and the kids and teens don't see it as, oh, that's just for those kids. It's everyone is going in. It's you go, you get work on your homework, you go get your snack, you go do reading buddies, something like that. And everyone is just sharing in this community together. So last slide here. I know I went pretty quick through that, but I really appreciate you all being here today and thinking about how you can help fill those hungry bellies. And I look forward to answering any questions in a little bit. Thanks so much.
All right, I think I'm up next. Hi, everybody. Shannon Amos, Children's Hunger Alliance. As Sarah kind of alluded to, we are the sponsor for the After School Meals Program and now the Summer Meals Program for Columbus Metropolitan Libraries and the many other libraries across the state of Ohio. So I want to thank No Kid Hungry for having us here today, and happy to share kind of a sponsor perspective for libraries. Next slide. Next slide. So a little bit about Children's Hunger Alliance. We are an agency dedicated to expansion of USDA child nutrition programs primarily, and as well as just anti-hunger programs for kids in any way that we can. So for those of you, I saw in the chat, many of you are from libraries. And so just for your familiarity, USDA child nutrition programs, just like meals and snacks, can be served in school through the school lunch and breakfast program, and as well now, as you're hearing, for summer and after school programs. We also sponsor family child care homes and child care centers to help provide healthy meals for kids in those early care settings as well. We are a large sponsor of After School and Summer, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We work with schools as a resource to help increase and assist schools in identifying ways to increase breakfast participation primarily, or other school meal participation. And then we also do some nutrition education and physical activity programs. So although I'm headquartered here in Columbus, we do serve statewide, and you'll see the map here in a second. Next slide. Here we go. So this is Ohio, and the stars represent where we have after school meal programs. Most of these areas, we also have summer programs. Just to give you a little bit of context about the size of our sponsorship and what that means. So I think Paige in her overview at the beginning of the presentation kind of talked about what a sponsor means. And so really we see our role as taking on the administrative and financial burden on behalf of the site for food served to youth programs. And so the way I see it is we want to make sure that programs who are serving food with After School and Summer don't really have to worry about food. Their main focus doesn't have to be food. Let that be our main focus, and let us provide the service to you so that you can focus on what you're doing. And in many cases, of course, libraries with community service and literacy services for the community, but also as you can see here, the unaffiliated site locations that we work with, we don't own or operate any of our own programs. So those community partnerships and collaborations are really the best partnerships that we have. And those, of course, many libraries, but also recreation centers, youth serving organizations like Boys and Girls Clubs, or even community organizations like Easter Seals that operate programs in the community, a lot of faith-based organizations and ESL programs as well. We serve, we don't also prepare any of our own food. A lot of sponsors do prepare their own food and distribute it in the community. So we are unique in that we use a combination of vended hot cold meals through various food vendors that we contract with, food service management companies that we contract with in different parts of the state. And then like Columbus Metro Libraries that also serve shelf stable, we provide shelf stable or ready to eat options that are fully compliant with either the after school or summer meal requirements. And so in last fiscal year, we served around 911,000 meals. And that's a little low for us. COVID really kind of knocked down a little bit of our participation, especially in some of our congregate programs. We did have some higher participation in some of our non-congregate programs, but that's a little low for us. Next slide. So many of you are libraries, so I feel like I'm kind of talking to the crowd here, but for the popularity, the reason that we got started with libraries, and Sarah and Jasmine's comments were so fantastic, and I really enjoyed listening to kind of that perspective. It's so nice to hear, you know, how that benefits them, but really the popularity of SFSP, the Summer Food Service Program, really, as Sarah mentioned, you know, really started kind of taking off with why can't we do this year round? And, you know, we're not only seeing this issue that happens in the summer, but, you know, as they expanded community resources, that food became a natural part of that extension of programming year round. So having a library champion has been extremely beneficial here in Ohio. Team Vittles is a group of library staff through the State Library of Ohio and other librarians that really has a focus on reducing food insecurity through providing food access at libraries. And they have been nothing short of just critical and fantastic partner, because they know the library systems, they can provide resources and support, they can be an advocate for providing food access. And so I had met with them several years ago to talk through what does after school meals mean? How is it different maybe than summer meals? How are other people, what kind of considerations do we need for summer versus after school meals, and starting to talk through that. And really it kind of expanded from there, and we got started. And I don't need to say that library branches as community centers, a lot of those branches were looking for additional community resources to provide, and additional food access was a natural extension of that. Next slide. So of course, as the other presenter said, there are of course unique opportunities and challenges with food in libraries. And so want to start with those opportunities. I really was trying to not put more challenges in here than opportunities, but the opportunities are good and they're big ones. So I think it's okay. I think the biggest opportunity for us as a statewide sponsor in being able to provide food access in more areas is that libraries are in every community. And that is just, it seems so simple, but it is so, especially in rural areas or areas where there are not sometimes a community center or as concentrated of community resources, there's almost always a library. And so that is one way that we can really outreach to very small communities and very rural communities sometimes when there may not be other options available. Libraries are service-minded, often looking for ways to connect their patrons to community services. I kind of said that already, but really we've had nothing but a great, great response and reception from any library that we've worked with that really wants to do more for their community. And so those partnerships have been great. Challenges, I think Jasmine mentioned this, that kind of overcoming the food in the library mentality. Honestly, that's not been as big of an issue as maybe kind of, you would expect it to be. There is a little bit of that, and there is some consideration, but I think talking through what that actually looks like, how to plan for it accordingly, really kind of helps people get to a place where they see that the benefits outweigh the potential challenges of having food in the library. Sarah mentioned the record keeping pieces. We did work quite a while just to make sure that we were going to be able to meet our regulatory requirements as a sponsor for record keeping with the attendance record keeping, with working with Ohio Department of Education, who oversees our sponsorship in Ohio, as well as working with the libraries and their regulations. So it took a minute to get there, but thankfully, because that is a state regulation, we were able to kind of apply it moving forward once we figured it out. Large versus small library systems, I think, there's several things here, I guess, that I will say regarding small and large libraries. First of all, their staffing is very uniquely different, as well as size of libraries are different, and how long those libraries are open is sometimes very different, the hours of the day, or just if there's only one staff member in the building for a certain period of time, that can be really challenging for food distribution. Because we do offer ready to serve food, that does cut down on some of the daily, accepting of deliveries, storage, temp requirements, some of those pieces that some programs either don't have staffing for, find too onerous, or not that they don't have a staff body to do it, but just that time and their resources are so limited that they don't have, the capacity to do it over the course of time. So those shelf-stable meals have been really a godsend in some of those places where that's, been a challenge. I think the other thing too is that we also only have food service management vendors that can provide hot, cold meals in so many areas. So if we have a location that is a few hours away, for example, from one of our library systems, we can always offer shelf-stable meals because those are things that we don't need a vendor to do. So it really opens up the access for us to provide those meals. Let's see. I keep using acronyms. So summer SFSP, Summer Food Service Program, summer to after school, and the after school to summer transition can be a little challenging because libraries want to serve meals year round, but there are some time frame restrictions on when those meals can be provided. So for example, we're coming right up on the end of the school year. We have some school districts that are ending all different dates, in the next couple of weeks. The after school meals program can only be operated through the end of the school year for the district that program is in. And so by stopping that and switching to summer, there is sometimes a gap between when one ends and one begins. And so that can be challenging to make sure we're providing consistent food access even during those gap times, because to kids, it doesn't matter that school ends tomorrow and I want food tomorrow, or the next day. We want to make sure that there's consistent food access. So we have tried to manage our start and end dates as close as possible. And when we can't do that, we have done just flat out donations for some of that food to some of our library systems as well, just for the consistency purposes. Next slide. So I'm speaking from a sponsor perspective in terms of if there are any other sponsors on here that want to outreach to libraries. And what that looks like. Word of mouth promotion is by far the best tool that we have. And I can thank, Team Vittles and some of the library systems that we sponsor for that, because they're just, they're the ones that are speaking from real life experience, just like Sarah and Jasmine, on the benefits of the program, and how much that the food in their branches has meant to them as far as their patrons are concerned. And I think, as I've alluded to a couple of times, just understanding the unique the setup of each system and branch of the library can help overcome barriers up front and can make that transition into food service pretty smooth. So understanding their staffing challenges or the ability for staffing for the program, the record keeping, the food type, like I've talked about, is cold food a better option versus shelf stable food? We've been often able to do group trainings, which has been both beneficial for us to, a day that all the branches are together and we are able to do group training for the library instead of one-off training. Helps answer questions, helps provide kind of continuity among service among the branches, has been also something that's been, pretty successful for us to implement over the course of the years we've been serving libraries. Next slide. I put this in here just to kind of show that there is a lot of growth potential for libraries. So as sponsors and as far as us, and our goals of providing additional food access, this is really important to us. So Columbus Metro was our inaugural library system that came on with us. And as Sarah alluded to, we started small. We wanted to pilot and make sure both on our side and their side, it was going to be successful. And then we quickly scaled up to serve many of their branches. So in this current school year, we do have a good mix of urban and rural library systems. We serve a total of 18 across the state. Of those 18, there are 72 library branches that are served. And then I just pulled our quick numbers from September, from the beginning of the school year through March. It's about 180,000 meals that we've served in library branches. So it's really a fantastic partnership, one that has certainly helped us, like I said, get into rural areas and get into many areas that we never thought that we might be able to get into because of our limitations with cold food. But between shelf stable and then between the outreach and partnerships with libraries, we really have been able to provide more food access in many more communities across the state over the last several years. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Shannon, Sarah, Jasmine. That was such a fantastic presentation. I don't have too much to add, but I do want to ask some questions so we can dive even deeper. So if you haven't already, please do put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll address those. And I pulled some questions from registration. So we have some from audience questions already. So this is more for the libraries. Is there any additional budget that goes into the program from the library side?
I don't mind answering first. So for us, we have managed to, over the last, We started in 2014. So about 8 years, we've managed to get by without adding more from our physical budget. We, as I said, we're a general fund department. We really do not have the ability to do so. We are kind of notorious when it comes to our funding as compared to other California libraries. I would say at the low end, you need to have probably a couple $1,000s for some operational supplies. And we've been able to do that through like grant funding and other state funding, things that we've applied for. I will admit that if you can dedicate money to somebody who can physically focus on the outreach and physically focus on serving and be like the point person on the program and not balancing other things simultaneously, you do see an increase in both access to the program and usage, and just like the program is more robust. So we've been able to do that with after school, and in the last couple of years, we have started to apply for funds to dedicate towards that because we've seen the difference. So to get started, no, but as it gets bigger, it's worth investing time and thought into, and if you can, you should.
Yeah, I'll jump in. We have a very similar story of, with the funding, we didn't really do a ton. There's certain things like if you do things that need to be stored in the fridge, you got to have a thermometer for it. And so it's like little costs like that, but we really didn't spend a whole lot. But now we're trying to make sure that we have fridges in locations that are going to serve like the daily delivered meals, and things like that. So it can be both, where you don't have to start with an investment, but then once you're able to make that investment, it can reap some fabulous benefits.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Another question. How do you keep the food and like group secure? So, making sure the food isn't just taken by other patrons, where do you store it, that sort of thing. And then staff to user ratio. How many staff do you think you need per for a group of children?
I'm happy to jump in with this one to get started. So we have a whole range to keep the food secure. Closets that are locked to get in there, as long as you're storing it above the floor, from like 12 inches above. And then we also have like random closets that now have fridges in them. So we can lock those closets when we've got the fridge, if they're doing a full, particularly in the summer, a full meal service, and they need to stay cold, we'll do that. One of my very, very favorite tips is to utilize, if you've got teen volunteers, or even adult volunteers, you can serve a lot of kids with just like 1 or 2 staff members in the room if you can kind of leverage your community. Best part is I will never be as cool as some of our like juniors in high school. And so the little kids will be so much more excited to go eat because they see the like teens go eat. And so it's a win-win for everyone.
So in our experience, most of our food has been brought in day of, which makes a big difference when it comes to storage, because we know that food is going to go out almost immediately within an hour or so. So we don't have to deal too extensively with storage, but even in that scenario, you're going to have a certain amount that you need to store for a certain amount of time that needs to be warmed or cooled. We have done it really depends on the location. So it's always kind of a little bit of a hard question to answer. If we know we're going to have a lot of people and we have the ability to keep it back in the staff workroom, that's what we'll do. And we'll bring it out during service and you have a staff member that's stationed with it. Some of our locations, because we partner with school districts, are sometimes able to give us school district staff members and they're the ones who handle that. And so it's not really on our plate at all. With our after school, all of those are kind of protected per se by our staff members. I have not had an explicit issue with people taking meals when they shouldn't be, though. That's not a problem area. I have seen, for the most part, it's fine. And you have people that are pretty respectful of the whole kind of like pipeline of offering the meals out. When it comes to like storing backup meals, we have found that having a fridge that's accessible for backup meals to be served, and it doesn't have to be a lot, it can be just a certain amount of like sandwiches that are stored in there, that can be super, super helpful. We've also had some sites that have shelf stable meals. So it's highly dependent upon what your partner wants to serve. We have both hot meal lunch sites and then cold meal lunch sites, and then just like shelf stable. And so every single one of them is slightly different. And that's why I had mentioned before, look at your area and look at what you have, because you're going to have to probably rethink each site depending upon your partner. And then as for how many people you need, like Sarah had said, I have gone with an entire auditorium with one staff member. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. That is too little. But the reality is that with a good amount of volunteer base, you can go on even a day when you don't have a lot of people, you can make it happen. When you have probably most of the time, you want minimum 2 people, upwards to 5, depending upon how many you can kind of get there. As long as you have volunteers, you can have a lot of the volunteers do a lot of the little things that have to get managed, like taking out the trash. And you can be the point person as the staff member that's actually managing everything happening. So you can do very small scale. A lot of our libraries, our rural libraries, only have 1 staff member, and they're the general staff member that already works there. And it's not too difficult because there isn't too many people coming in at once, so it's pretty manageable, and they'll have the stuff out while they're also talking to people.
Awesome. I do want to ask, like, if you could say one thing to a library or a sponsor to convince them to do this, what would it be? And I also just want to flat, and I'm going to start with Shannon. So think about that short, because we're running out low on time. We'll go Shannon, Jasmine, Sarah. But then also leverage, the sponsors. Sponsors have so much, especially if they've been doing this a while, they have a lot of knowledge and tips and tricks to do this. So you're not in it alone. It's a partnership. The libraries and sponsors can definitely do this together. So Shannon, what would be the one thing you would tell someone?
Yeah, well, kind of what you just said, Paige, which is, don't anticipate that your barriers are going to prevent you from participating. Talk through those with other libraries, talk through those with sponsors, because usually there is a way that we can work together or manage it together, either through meal type or, other things. There are a lot of rules and regulations, but, there are a lot of opportunities to make the program work. So I would say always explore. Don't just assume you can't do it.
Over to you, Jasmine.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would say just do it. Honestly, we work a lot with especially our locations that have never done it before, and there's a lot of anticipation, a lot of nerves about bringing something in that we are just completely unfamiliar with in the library hemisphere. And honestly, I have found that the first week is hard, because you're learning how it's going to go, you're figuring it out, you're kind of encountering those issue areas. And then by the time you're done with that first week, you've got it. It's easy, it's clockwork, it's not difficult. And it ends up being so much more fruitful than you can kind of anticipate it being. And you see regulars. I've worked with some families that have come into our library for 5+ years. You've seen kids grow up spending their time in the library at meal service and getting connected to books when they weren't before. And so I would say just go for it and know that you'll figure out solutions for the problem areas. They are not insurmountable. And I love the recommendation about working with your provider. They know what they're doing, and take their advice. They know what they're doing, and we know what we're doing with the enrichment aspect, and you just sort of come together and figure out solutions together.
All right, Sarah?
All right. Well, I think the biggest thing that I can say to everyone is librarians are magic. And you can, you think about hunger is often kind of hidden. You don't necessarily know who's hungry in your community. So then you'll start this program. It, just like Jasmine and Shannon have said, it might seem hard at first, but then you get the swing of things, and it's actually something that I know all of you can do, because I meet folks in different libraries around the country at like PLA or ALA, and I know that the passion and the drive is there. Don't be intimidated. because you can do it, and you will meet needs you don't even know you have in your community.
Thank you all so much. I know we're at the hour, but I do want to share some resources. So if you can stay on the line, please do. And so, yeah, so this is a fantastic case study. It talks about the program in a library before the pandemic. So, you know, with these, with the more restricted program, if you will, a really great resource. Next slide. Then we have all of these other resources, so many resources. And of course, our new website. So please do check all of these out. Next slide. And I do want to flag a couple summer resources because I know many of you are also doing summer or maybe interested in summer. This is a great outreach toolkit. We have No Kid Hungry houses a texting line. So anyone can text food or comida to 304-304 to find their nearest summer meal sites. So please do use this toolkit, share it out. You don't have to be a sponsor or a site to spread the word about summer meals. Next slide. Also, if you are a site and are changing operations, a great communications toolkit here. Next slide. And tips for, you know, keeping all the kiddos there. Tips for congregate meal service. We know we're going back to that this summer and next school year. So this is a great resource. And next slide. And then this webinar we did with USDA, if you are curious about kind of what happened during COVID and what's now allowable and not allowable, all those things. This is a fantastic webinar where USDA did an update and we did kind of a back to basics training on summer meals. And last but not least, please do like and subscribe. We have our newsletter, which you can find all of our upcoming webinars and grant opportunities and new resources. So please do subscribe. And that is our website. And my information is on the next slide, where you can always reach out to me. I'm so happy to have you all. Thank you for staying a little bit late, and I'll let you have the rest of your day. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good day.